Happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there. This is a Locked On crossover featuring Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Terps. I'm Zach Seyko, your host of your favorite daily Penn State podcast. He is Trey Moore, the host of your favorite daily Maryland podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can keep it going with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. If you got a final score prediction, let us know down in the comments section. And honestly, because of the holiday, if you got a favorite Thanksgiving dish or dessert, let us know that in the comments section as well. Trey, we're going to go through the storylines of this game. It's personal for James Franklin. How is Maryland going to be able to get up for this game? Talk of firing Mike Locksley. There's no bowl game to play for. There's really nothing on the line for the Terps. And we're also going to go over some key matchups and stuff and how Maryland can keep this game close. If they can keep it close, Trey, I want to address kind of the biggest storyline in my mind is from Maryland's point of view is the fact that Mike Locksley more or less on somewhat of a hot seat and the team doesn't have anything to play for. What is the vibe right now with the Terrapins? Are they going to be able to get up for this game?
Yeah, I mean, the vibes are low for sure. In
Okay.
College Park, the vibes are definitely low. A lot of people are pretty disappointed with how this year has gone. I'm pretty disappointed with how this year has gone overall. I still think that Mike Locksley is still firmly our coach. I said in one of the Locked on Terps episodes, I said one bad year at Maryland. I don't think he should be fired after three straight bowl appearances. But the vibes are definitely not good. But I think that this game against Penn State, I don't know why we wouldn't be able to get up for this game. It's the last game of the year. We don't have a bowl game. There's nothing after this. There's no bowl game after this. I want to see a Maryland team get excited to play a Penn State team that's one of the top teams in the country. And if you can't get up for that, then I don't know why you're playing, to be honest. And this kind of, I don't want to say this is our bowl game, but it kind of is
In a
for
sense,
us.
yeah.
Yeah, this can make our season change it around a little bit, change the perspective of it if we can do something special or something crazy against Penn State. But vibes are definitely low in College Park, and I think we're struggling to find some motivation. But I think when Penn State's standing in your way, I think that's enough motivation you should have right there.
Well, Maryland could always play spoiler. I mean, that's certainly what Minnesota was trying to do a week ago with the Nittany Lions. This game being back in Beaver Stadium, I think, helps Penn State. And this is personal for James Franklin. So as personal as this would be for Maryland, just because the series has not gone Maryland's way over the past decade, the two wins that come to mind are the only wins really in a long time are the 2020 COVID season
Yeah.
and the first game in 2014 with the no handshake, last second field goal. But so if you take away the 2020 season, that's really the only game where Maryland can point to and say we got Penn State,
Yeah.
we got them. It's personal for James Franklin. And he pointed out at the beginning of his press conference, I don't know if you saw this, Trey, but he made it very apparent. I'm familiar with Maryland. I spent a lot of time over there. I was the head coach in waiting.
Yeah.
It, why bringing that up unprovoked? James
Yeah.
Franklin, when it comes to Maryland and it comes to for him personally, this is a rivalry. So any chance he gets to stick it to Maryland, he's going to seize that opportunity.
Yeah, he definitely is going to seize that opportunity. A little bit of pettiness, for sure, and hopefully that can help Maryland and motivate them a little bit. You see the Penn State talking, Penn State head coach Coach Franklin talking about Maryland, how he was the head coach in waiting, and all these different things. Hopefully that can excite a Maryland program and maybe be like, we need to shut this guy up or something like that. But yeah, but definitely, yeah. I mean, Coach Franklin. I mean, a lot of people thought he would be the next coach at Maryland. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people probably still wish he would have been the head coach at Maryland, doing a pretty solid job over there at Penn State and getting you guys in the right direction. So that's definitely an interesting type of topic that probably gives him more motivation, and he doesn't want to lose this game.
No, I mean, and Penn State, I think would definitely drop a significant. I don't it the discourse around this around the Minnesota game. at least in my mind, that Penn State fell out of the top 12. I did
Mhm.
not see Penn State because they wouldn't have the Big Ten championship or anything else to kind of rebuff the resume. I mean, the same thing applies here against Maryland. I don't expect Penn State to lose to Maryland,
Mhm.
but if they did, the committee would have every single reason to drop them out of the top 12, and Penn
Right.
State would need a lot of luck to get into the college football playoff as an at-large.
Yeah, definitely. But the fact of the matter is, Maryland's not very good this year.
Yeah.
What is the spread? A 25-point spread or
Yep.
something?
Yep.
So realistically, I don't see it happening. But I think that it would be really hard on a Penn State resume if Maryland could find a way. I mean, I guess they say crazier things have happened, but still, Maryland team that has struggled this year, that isn't very good, that has one Big Ten win, playing a Penn State team that has solid all around team. In my opinion, just about everywhere, every position group has dudes. It's not going to be easy to be able to do that for a Maryland team.
Trey, you pointed out how this is give or take a 24.5 point spread in favor of Penn State, but can Maryland keep it close? Could Maryland cover that spread? And if they're going to try to pull off the upset, what would they do? Now, how can Penn State dominate the Terrapins? We're going to discuss that with key matchups and more coming up on the other side of this break. And today's crossover episode, is brought to you by FanDuel. You can tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. If you win, the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, a few live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And let's look over at FanDuel.com. The lines for Penn State versus Maryland are posted. Penn State is a 24.5 point favorite on FanDuel, minus 4,000 on the money line. If you're thinking Maryland, plus 1,400 on the money line, the total is set at 50.5. If you like those lines, you can go over to FanDuel.com. And remember, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Trey, let's pick back up with the key matchups or things to watch for in terms of X's and O's on Penn State's side. And this, I think Penn State's pass offense versus Maryland's pass defense is
Yeah.
the big key here. I look at so Maryland is 90th in terms of yards per completion, and I think is 105th in yards per game. So what that tells me is that, okay, Maryland's prone to giving up the explosive play. They're actually pretty solid against the run, but when it comes to the pass, it is not good. And when Penn State has Drew Aller, who's playing his best football, Tyler Warren is putting together a Heisman resume here. And then Amari Evans and Trey Wallace can get in on the fun too here. I just don't know what Maryland's answer is to stop any of that combination, especially Tyler Warren, who I think is going to have the whole playbook at his disposal. Penn State is keen on trying to get him to New York for a Heisman invitation. I don't think he'll win. I'm not saying he should win, but he should be with a game against Maryland to establish his campaign. He should definitely get an invite if he gets 2-3 touchdowns, another 150-yard game, and I just don't know how Maryland stops him.
I don't know either how we
Okay.
stop them. I don't know either how we stop them because we haven't been able to stop anybody this year in terms of passing offense. And so going against the best tight end in the nation, a kid that's put up an amazing type of season. And I've loved watching some of his games at Penn State and what he can do as a player. We've not been able to stop people with a lot less talent than Warren. So I don't know how we're going to stop him. We honestly don't have the personnel to stop him. And I think Maryland's secondary and Maryland's linebackers and coverage and whoever you look at on this team hasn't been good all year, hasn't been able to stop the pass all year. I mean, you just named the statistics. There's been bad or not, I won't say bad quarterbacks, but there have been some mediocre quarterbacks in the Big Ten that have been able to throw the ball all over us. And it was a huge problem this year, is just being able to stop the pass. And I thought it really held us back at times because our secondary, very young. We're used to having a guy or two that's pretty locked down, that has his name in the NFL draft conversations, whether it's been Tarheeb Still last year, who's starting for the Chargers. If you're watching the NFL, he's played a ton on Monday Night Football in that game, or Deontay Banks 2 years ago. Like, we don't have that type of guy this year, and I think Locksley and our defensive staff is used to having that type of guy, but we have a bunch of younger guys that don't have a Big Ten experience, and it just hasn't really worked. And I expect Penn State to be able to throw the ball on us because we haven't been able to stop really any passing attack. Unless the team is just going to decide we're going to run the ball and not throw the football against Maryland, you should be able to have some success. And with Tyler Warren and some of those other guys you named, there's no reason why Penn State won't be able to throw the football against Maryland.
What about the pass rush for Maryland? There doesn't seem like they get a lot of pressure. At least they don't get home. They're not. There's not a lot of sacks generated here, because I look at Penn State just lost starting right tackle Anthony Donko for the foreseeable future. He has what's designated as a long-term injury, and Nolan Rucci isn't the best in pass protection. So I look, if I want to look at a key matchup and be objective and say Nolan Rucci versus maybe one of Maryland's better pass rushers, who would that be if Maryland wanted to try to use that matchup to their advantage?
Yeah, there's a couple guys from Maryland that can definitely do it a little bit, but there's no one extreme that you should be super worried about. I would say a guy like Kellen Wyatt has had a pretty good year. He can do some things rushing the passer, as well as some of those inside guys, Tommy Aking-Basote, Jordan Phillips, the interior of the defensive line. Those guys get after it a little bit, but there's definitely not a huge pass rush for Maryland football than there hasn't been for the entire year. But those are two guys that absolutely can get after it a little bit. But I wouldn't be too concerned about the Maryland pass rush. I would say that if you have injuries up front, this is a game where it probably isn't going to kill you. We have solid guys up there, like I said, with Quayshawn Fuller as well. But there's just not a lot of dominance in terms of sacks right now. Actually, a kid in our linebacker room, Caleb Wheatland, who's our middle linebacker, actually leads the team in sacks. So you might look for him to blitz some. But in terms of just straight pressure, Kellen Wyatt has 3 sacks on the year, has been decent. Quayshawn Fuller has 2. But other than that, it's not a whole lot of pressure that's being generated this year from our defensive line. And it's a huge problem. And that's why I say it's really hard for our young secondary to play at a high level, because we don't have a defensive line that's helping them out and creating a ton of pressure. So it's just not a good combination to have. And that's why I think teams have a lot of success passing the football against us.
Yeah, and if you give time for Drew Aller to go through his progressions, and eventually a receiver is going to get open, because I don't think Penn State's wide receivers are the best in the world, but they still do have Tyler Warren. He is the best in the world at tight end, so that's going to be a matchup nightmare for Maryland. Flipping it over to the other side of the football, Maryland's been turnover prone. Billy Edwards, I thought was going to be an above average quarterback in the Big Ten personally, but I know he's dealing with a thumb injury. He's clearly not the same. Maryland's offensive line doesn't help him. And I can't remember the last time that Maryland had a true front 5 that was above average, elite. Over the past decade, I don't know what it is when it comes to offensive line development or recruiting, but Maryland's front 5 is never really good, and that doesn't do anybody justice, whether you're going back to Talia Tagovailoa or now Billy Edwards in this case. I like Billy Edwards, dual threat quarterback. You always have to be worried about the run here, but or I say what I should say that I'm more concerned about is that dynamic duo at wide receiver. Caden Prather was somebody that Penn State targeted in the transfer portal, but Ty Felton. I mean, Felton's is the do everything man for Maryland. 90 plus receptions. I think if he's not already, he's over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's going to be an intriguing matchup to me. Him versus AJ Harris, and AJ Harris struggled a little bit against an NFL caliber receiver in Daniel Jackson of Minnesota. So if the key matchup to allow Ty Felton and AJ Harris have an impact on this game is Penn State's front four versus Maryland's front five.
Yeah, the Maryland, like you said, it feels like our offensive line's never good.
It's never good.
Never good. It's easy as that. It's never good. And I've been saying Mike Locksley has to figure it up front. We're in the Big Ten, and if you want to be able to compete at a high level, and you're not going to have some top end quarterback, then you're going to have some guys up front. But yeah, Penn State's defensive line should dominate our offensive line, and that's just me being completely honest. We haven't been able to block really anybody this year, and it makes it really hard on Billy Edwards to get the ball out and to get, even though Ty Felton has had such a successful year, he could have even done even more if our offensive line was truly like a good unit, because Billy Edwards, especially over the past couple of games, just doesn't have time, or MJ Morris last week just they just don't have the time. And we also can't establish the run, so we're not put in good spots. So we can't run block, we can't pass block. So it gets really hard against some of the more talented teams like a Penn State to get a guy like Ty Felton going and up to the speed and where we want him to be. And he's having a really good year, but you just look at it and you say it's definitely going to be a key matchup, but you say, is Billy Edwards going to have enough time to be able to get Ty Felton the ball consistently enough? And then how does Penn State kind of game plan around a Ty Felton? Did they leave your corners on islands, or do they kind of say we're going to maybe show a little double safety over the top type of thing? That's definitely going to be something that's interesting as well. But Ty Felton has been he was in the Biletnikoff conversation in the semifinalists, and so he's been the guy for us. And then Caden Prather, no slouch as a number 2 either. And those are our best 2 players on the offensive side of the ball. So getting those 2 guys going is important, but it's tough with Billy Edwards. It's hard to kind of gauge how good he is because it's like we don't do anything else well around him. So I say that it's definitely someone that Ty Felton's definitely someone that's special. That's a tough cover, but will we have enough time to throw to him consistently? Probably not.
And as we wrap up this show, Trey, we're going to talk about the key players, the difference makers, and like I said, how can this favor both either Penn State and Maryland? And we'll give our final score predictions on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. Trey, I think we did a really good job of putting into perspective what those key matchups are, but now it's about execution. Okay, so the keys to the game and how Penn State wins this: get pressure, don't allow Billy Edwards to settle in, don't give Maryland the confidence to say that, oh, we can upset Penn State. We're right in the thick of this. So build a lead, show Maryland that, remind them that yes, they are not a good team this season. So if you can go up 21-3 or 21-7 at halftime, build at least a double-digit lead going into the half, and using the passing game. Tyler Warren is going to be uncoverable by Maryland, and then but my concerns are not for Penn State's offense. It's Penn State's defense. They're not tackling well. The pass defense has been a little suspect as of late. They're bending, and they're not breaking, but a Minnesota offense that just frankly is barely top 100 across the board was able to move the football and scored 25 points. I know they had some help on special teams, but Maryland, at least from the outside perspective, is an offensive team. When they're clicking, Billy Edwards and Roman Hemby at running back and Ty Felton and Caden Prather, those are all really good weapons at the collegiate level. So if Maryland can find some rhythm, they can maybe go, punch for punch. I think eventually Penn State would pull away, but that's how Maryland stays in this game, by trying to just, okay, we're going to go up tempo and try to score some more. Easier said than done, but that's how Penn State just needs to build a lead and then basically chew clock and just say, this is how we're going to end our season here. We just need a win. I think a dominant win would help Penn State's case, since there's people doubting them in the college football playoff, in the playoff race, but in this game, I am not expecting Maryland to keep it close. I'm going to go 42-17 for my final score prediction. I
Mm.
think Maryland will definitely at least have some respectable plays, some big plays offensively. But I don't know that they score when they get down in the red zone either.
Yeah, I see the game in a similar way. I think that's definitely right. If Maryland's going to stay toe to toe with Penn State, they're just going to have to kind of
That's how they
score,
have to do it. It's
score.
not a
Yeah,
defensive struggle. Yeah.
yeah. It's not going to be a defensive struggle because I just don't see us doing that, and we haven't been able to do that in the past. Yeah, and I think a key for Maryland is Maryland has to win the turnover battle if they
Mm-hmm.
want to just stay in the game. If we lose the turnover battle by just even one, I don't see us staying in the game into the third quarter. Probably, I would say. I think Maryland has to win the turnover battle probably by two, maybe three, to really
Hmm.
be like in a game in a like 14-ish point game.
A
Um,
winnable
I,
spot. Yeah.
yeah, and like a winnable spot. You probably have to win the turnover battle by three, which is usually how these crazy upsets kind of happen. You need a couple turnovers, you need a couple special teams plays, you need some luck to go your way. That's how I see it for Maryland. So I think that's kind of the key for the Terps is the turnover battle. I also think it's Billy Edwards and his legs. Get his legs
Mm.
going in a game like this. He's a really good athlete. We just haven't
He
used
is.
we haven't used it a ton this year, and I still don't understand that. But I think that's another reason, another way that Maryland needs to get going is Billy Edwards in his legs. I think that's a X factor. That's something that if Maryland is able to do, they can have a really good shot, or not a really good shot, but they can have a good shot at doing some good things on offense and putting together a couple of good drives possibly on offense if you can get Billy Edwards a couple of good plays with his legs.
Trey, do you have any fiery stat predictions? Because like I said, I think that Tyler Warren will have the kitchen sink at his disposal. At Penn State, yes, a win is valuable here, but James Franklin, back when Saquon Barkley was at Penn State, was not afraid of doing
Mhm.
everything necessary to build up the Heisman resume. So I think that Tyler Warren will throw, run, and catch a touchdown. I think he has a hat trick against Maryland. I genuinely believe that. It might not happen in all three of those categories, but I do think that Tyler Warren, I think my big stat prediction is that Tyler Warren has a cumulative 100 yards, maybe 150, and three touchdowns, at least two.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'll say Ty Felton. I'll say Ty Felton gets going, and we target him a lot in this game. And I think even with the poor offensive line, we're going to throw a ton of screens to him. So I'll
Okay.
say Ty Felton, as a bold prediction, gets like 9 receptions because we just get a bunch of quick passes. I'm not saying goes for a ton of yards, but I'm going to
Hmm.
say gets 9 receptions and a touchdown just because that's the game plan where we throw a bunch of quick stuff to Ty Felton, get the ball out of Billy Edwards' hands to kind of offset that poor offensive line. And we've seen Ty Felton do that this year. We've seen him have games where he has a ton of receptions, a ton of receiving yards overall. But I think that can happen with a poor offensive line. I think the game plan is going to be throw a bunch of screens and just get Ty Felton the ball quickly, maybe on some slants, some quick hitches, some things like that as well. So I'll say Ty Felton gets 9 receptions against Penn State. And then also the game script could lead to that.
Hmm.
Maryland, I'm
Playing from
guessing,
behind.
yeah, playing from behind. I can see them just having to throw the ball a lot. And we like to throw the ball anyway a lot. So I can see that happening too.
Sometimes it's best to just get the football into your playmakers' hands and let them do the dirty work. Get a plate in your hands. This is our Thanksgiving episode, crossover episode here between Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Terps. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Celebrate accordingly. Watch as much football as you can. Eat as much food as you can. Celebrate with friends and family as much as you can. Trey, I am thankful for you. Thank you so much for doing this crossover episode with me to help me preview Penn State versus Maryland.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. This was a great episode. Thank you.